I hope you all got the list of what we're going to go through, but I'm just going to jump straight in and start presenting and tell you a little bit about who the hell I am and what do I think I know about projection. So I'm going to share a screen. Can people see that? Martha, can you see that? Right, I'm not on the first page. Okay, great. So hi everyone, my name's Thomas Buckley. I'm an artist. I do lots of different things, but my main practice, I guess, my main medium is projection. I have a real passion for digital work, and especially digital work that is made for people who are maybe not in iPhone adverts and not, I don't know, in Fitbit commercials. I don't know, I like to make work that's really human and is accessible. So I like to use this example of a piece of work that I did, which I think tells you a lot about my practice. It's called Come Inside, It's Raining. It was on for the 2018 Brighton Digital Festival. And the whole kind of concept was it's a rainstorm trapped inside a church. And all you needed to do to enjoy the work was to come in and kind of just remember a time where you'd been caught in the rain. I feel like everyone's had really human moments in the rain. They've been kissed in the rain or fallen over or, I don't know, ran home from school. So the piece is really digital. There's about 8, I've got people coming in. There's about 8 projectors in the space. There's lots of different surfaces. There's a soundscape. There's floor projection. And it's a really digital space, but hopefully it didn't feel that digital. It just felt like a place to be a human in, and that's what I really like to do with my work. So I don't tend to typically do what I think people think projectionists do, which is big architectural, outdoor, dragons, fire and robots, headline concert type work, but I prefer to do things that are maybe a little bit more gentle and things that you can connect with a little bit more. I'm also really interested in what you pair projection with. I think sometimes we think that projection is kind of the be all and end all, and that's the headliner of the piece of work. But for me, I really like to play with scale. So a big room that's kind of reverberating with raindrops, but inside I built these umbrellas, which I don't know if you're going to get this, but have you ever been in the rain at night and you close your eyes and you've got your little eyelashes with raindrops on, and then you look at a street lamp and it makes all sparklies in your eyes? That's the light refracting around. So I found this film that I could coat umbrellas with, which had the same effect. So you'd be in this kind of digital rainstorm and you might pick up an umbrella, and when you held it to the light, it would kind of spit out all the light into the reflected colors. To kind of like make things feel near and far as well. I also really like forests. I think for me, there's something about being young and seeing a really big tree. And even now, I think lots of people have really nostalgic memories of forests. So a lot of my work is about forests and being small in a big space. This is a project that I did in London Printworks, which I think is now like a super pumping club venue, but back in 2019 was like an abandoned warehouse. So I did this event, which was filling the warehouse with like pine smoke and these big projections of trees and silver birch to kind of make you feel a little bit small. This again is quite a digital work. There's 4 ultra short throw projectors in here covering sort of 25 meters square, a big space, really big space. And then talking a little bit more about what you kind of pair projection with, I also started a company maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, which is called the Society of Cocktails. I really got interested in this idea of projection being really big, and maybe how can you, I don't know, how can you kind of balance that, the showiness of it with something tender or something unexpected. So for maybe 3 or 4 years now, I've been running a company called Society of Cocktails, which includes things like taste and smell alongside projection. I'll talk a little bit more about that and give some examples in a little bit. I just wanted to kind of flag this up. And in 2019, I was looking at projection and other immersive technologies with the Royal Shakespeare and Magic Leap. So things like virtual reality, augmented reality, spatial computing, and how those can all mix with projection to create senses of immersion, particularly in theatre. So more on that kind of how do you use projection in line with other things. I wanted to tell you about a project that I did towards the end of 2019 called Memory Bar. Basically, I did a residency in Jersey. So Jersey is an island just between South Coast and France. And Jersey was actually occupied by the Nazis during the war. And there's a real heritage there of memories. It was a really difficult time for the islanders. Food was really scarce. And there's lots of things wrapped up in people's experiences about food and taste. So I went with my collaborators, Ned and Renska, who are a mixologist and a perfumer, and me, a technologist or projectionist. And we wanted to investigate how we could use those skills to tell the stories of those people. So went to Jersey, met maybe 3 or 4 people now in their sort of late 80s, early 90s, and heard some of their stories about what it was like to be a child. There was some amazing stories. The pictures you're looking at here, this was a lady who could remember taking a sweet from a Nazi soldier who passed it over her garden wall. And it was such a strange memory to hear and for her to tell, I think, because it was kind of wrapped in childhood ideas of guilt, but also something really sweet and precious. So we kind of served this as a cocktail bar, as a banquet, these memories. And when this memory was served, the table kind of shot across with a garden wall, and flowers bloomed and butterflies. It was all very idyllic. It was all a bit secret garden. It's kind of Victorial on a garden. And then we served a memory, which was, I think you can see it here in the top left, which was a glass rolled in cut grass and flower petals and sugar. So to drink it, you had to kind of awkwardly try not to spill it and pull it out of this bag. And it got your hands in such a mess, got your hands really sticky, and the drink was really sickly sweet. And then we followed it with a hand washing ceremony and kind of projected light in this bottom section, you can see, into this red glass. So you had these kind of swirling flowers, and it was about kind of washing away some of that guilt maybe, and just allowing yourself to be a child. So really quite different from big architectural stuff. I'm really more interested in using projection to get really close and whisper to people and tell people stories. This is a project that I did following that, which was Memory Box. This was in relation to to COVID, basically. So a lot of these people that I'd met through the research for Memory Bar suddenly hadn't been allowed to leave their house in a year and got really isolated. So I really wanted to do something to respond to that. So with Art House Jersey, who was the partner for the project on Jersey, we decided to do Memory Box, which basically took the whole experience and shrunk it down into something that could be posted. This was a real challenge, obviously, because projection is not usually tried to put into a box. It included lots of other different things as well. Included some little electronics. There was a taste moment. And just how can you really pull that scale in and let someone have that moment in their own home. The story, I'll tell you kind of a little bit about it. It was the story, the memory in the box was the story of a man who's brought to Jersey as a prisoner of war and forced to work on the coast of Jersey building German defences. And his kind of accounts of his time there talks a lot about concrete and the tough weather and the salt of the sea, and to kind of replicate that, we worked with someone to make these things on the right which look like concrete, but actually they're marshmallows and inside they taste like apple. And the memory is actually tells the story of this guy who meets a young girl on Jersey who brings him apples and basically saves his life. So in combination with like projection, taste, I hope we were able to kind of deliver this little life experience that I think is really hopeful and really lovely, and is about kind of perseverance and sustenance in times of difficulty. And this project reached 200 older people on the island of Jersey. Yeah, and is not, I don't think, the usual way to use projection. So that's kind of like a little run through of things that I've done and things that I'm interested in. And then I've been really lucky for the last 3 or 4 weeks to be on residency with Digital Democracies, exploring other ways to kind of push that idea of non-typical projection or DIY. I don't know, just trying to hack this idea of what projection is and what it could be and who's it's for and what the right way to experience it is. So I'm going to talk you through those weeks and have a look at some of the things I had to go with. So in each of these weeks, I've tried to do it so that it's useful to people who are starting out with projection if you don't have too much experience. So I've listed the projector that I used and some of the phrases that I've used. So in each week, there's kind of terminology or things that you'd hear a lot when you're maybe looking to buy a projector or do projection work. So I'll explain those as we go. But my first week, I'm using this one, which is an Epson EB-E01 projector. Now that sounds really dry, but maybe write it down if you're kind of just starting into projection. It's not expensive and it's really bright. It's probably the brightest for the price point on the market. It's like a domestic projector, but it's 3,300 lumens, which is a really good brightness level. So I have a few of these. I use them a lot. If you kind of want to get into this kind of work and you're thinking, oh, what kind of unit should I get? This is a good one to kind of start with and start playing with. So for my first week, as a kind of warm up, I don't know if you can see here on the right, I was just watching music videos and decided to start messing around with that and putting things in front of the projector. I've kind of explored this a little bit before, but not really. So I started putting things like water, mirrors, lenses, and just kind of seeing what happened without having to break open the projector or use any software. Just plug it in and start putting pieces of card and messing around, really. And then I put a old scruffy plastic lens, which I think you can see here, from a torch. I think it is in front. And I didn't really work out what this was doing for a while until I started bringing a surface really close to it. And what it was doing was kind of condensing all this light to a tiny little image and focusing it really closely to the lens. So for those who maybe don't know some of these terms, throw, what it was doing was it was kind of really minimizing the throw. So you'll hear this a lot if you're working with projection. The throw is the distance, is how big the image is from the distance that you put it close to the surface. So if you're looking at projectors on specs, it will give you a throw ratio. So a throw ratio might be like 0.25, which would be a really close range projector. So it's how much size you get, how much distance you are from the surface. And I was saying earlier, I've kind of explored this before. I find optics, and I don't know if that's physics, I think it's physics. The idea of optics is so confusing. I don't understand how pieces of glass make things bigger or smaller. I think that's really difficult to work out. So I know previously I've kind of thought of projectors as a reverse camera that kind of helps you work it out, whereas instead of a camera capturing the light that's happening out there by kind of spreading it or condensing it, a projector does it the opposite way. It puts the light out to make it bigger or smaller. That kind of helps my thinking of it anyway. So that meant I could do some teeny tiny projections by using this little torch lens that's just made of plastic. Meant I could shrink my image down really, really small. You can't really do that without a lens just because of the size of the pixel. So for example, if I wanted to project here on this butterfly wing without using a lens, the pixel would probably be, you know, half the size of the wing, depending on how close the projector was. So it's not something I couldn't have done without it. You needed to kind of really focus that and get the resolution right on the wing. And this I just did in After Effects. So towards the end of this session, I'm going to show you how a lot of the times I'm just prototyping in After Effects rather than going into a separate projection mapping software. For me, it works much quicker. I'm able to change content on the fly and make adjustments really quick. So this is all done in After Effects. And this kind of got me onto the idea of maybe these projections are whispers. Text worked really well. So I just kind of just sat there with this spiderweb butterfly wing, typing myself out little messages. And it all felt a little bit cheeky and a bit naughty. And I don't know, because I was just kind of hunched over this thing, typing myself messages. So I like the idea that maybe what I was doing was projecting the kind of whispers and secrets that we might tell each other that don't really go anywhere. They just get caught under our sofas and bundled in the side of like skirting board. So that was week 1, catching whispers in spider webs with cheap lenses. And week 2. This is another really good projector that I recommend. I think they're a little bit more expensive. I think they're about £500, but this is a short throw projector, and I use short throw projectors all the time. So like before, where I was saying about throw is the distance of the projector to the surface, a short throw projector means you can get your projector closer, which has all kinds of benefits. It means that if something passes between, you've got less of a chance of it casting a shadow, if that makes sense. You don't need to take up so much space so people can't move in front of it. So if you're doing things like events or exhibitions where you're taking over spaces that don't have projection rigs, then a short throw projector is really, really handy. And for this week, I wanted to look at gauze and scrim and this kind of projection netting. You see it a lot in theatre. So things like big theatre productions, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child will use loads and loads of this. It creates these crazy effects that you can see here. I've just done this in After Effects and particles. And it looks holographic, and under the right lighting, you can just conjure things on a stage or in a venue or in a set. But it's so expensive. I'm using here a little sample that I got in my hand. I think before I've been able to afford to have 2 meters by 2 meters, which is like £600. So more expensive than the projector I'm using, which is just crazy. It's so prohibitive. But I spent this week kind of looking for alternatives. I haven't put the exact thing that I'm using here just because I kind of don't want people to feel, if they want to pursue this, I don't want to feel left out if they can't find the exact one, but I can send it in an email or I can link it if that's useful. Maybe you can let me know in the chat. But you can see here I've compared, I think, 2 types, and the difference isn't that different. Like you don't need to spend huge amounts of money. You can just find something that's a similar kind of netting or gauze and start playing with this kind of projection. So I've just kind of put here gauze or scrim. It's this netting. The only thing I would say is with this, you're going to have to do rear projection. That's the only time that I noticed a big difference, because theatre scrim is kind of coated with a reflective material. What that means is that it will take the light better and reflect it better, whereas this kind of cheaper one that I'm using, which was I think £2 a square meter, so like 50 times cheaper, it's so much cheaper. You need to rear project. All rear projecting means is that your projector is behind the surface and the audience is in front, so you're projecting it out here rather than hitting a surface. So for week 2, I did finally do some mapping a little bit. I used map, which I'm going to show you guys a little bit later. And I've just got here kind of illustration of this setup, which I did in Paint. It's on the right here. I don't think I can get this video to play, but I'd like to show you the video that I made at the end of the week. So I'm going to come out of here and show it from my desktop, if that makes sense. Can you, I don't know if you can hear that. It might be a bit boring if you can't hear it, but I won't be able to see if you can hear it or not. So let me know after if it was boring. Oh, screen sharing's paused. Oh no. Sorry guys. I don't know why it didn't let me do that. Let me try something. Okay. Can you see that? Right, okay. I'm not sure if you're going to get audio, but I'll share the video so you can get an idea of how this kind of projection might work and what you could use it for. So all I'm doing here, I'm sat behind the screen and then I'm projecting from me out to the camera. Yeah, so that was my week 2 looking at kind of scrim. So if you use projection and you've not tried projecting on gauze or scrim before, definitely have a go because you can kind of just make things appear in the right conditions. And then week 3. Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit later, I think, about what's the usual way to do projection mapping, I guess. But one of the kind of top rules of projection mapping is to don't move the projector. So this is exactly what my whole goal was in week 3, was to move the projector as much as I could. I think I skipped past that a little bit, but for this one, I'm not using a decent projector. I'm using a projector that I think was £15 from eBay. I've used these quite a lot, which I don't know why, I just quite like them. They're really cheap and quick and easy. They've got a built-in media player, so you can just make a video and plug it in. What I did, I made this horrendous Frankenstein monster where I've got this £15 projector, which is plugged into a £5 phone charger battery thing, portable phone charger. And then I've just kind of strapped my iPhone to it, which is kind of giving me like a mobile projector unit, which has like a fixed focal point of view. So I'll kind of show you how that ended up looking. And this was like the most freeing experience of my life. After years of trying to be this artist that has these cables and does these things, does these kind of big projection installations, I was suddenly able to just run around and just project wherever I wanted to. So I made lots of video of running animals and just kind of ran around my my studio, just kind of, I don't know, chasing these animals around, which was the best fun I've had in ages. So refused to stop having fun. And the next thing I kind of looked at was how does that, what's the next step of that? So I got a portable power pack. I used that short throw projector that you saw in previous slide, and a little media player. I made one out of a Raspberry Pi. But when I say media player, that's like a physical thing. You can buy them off eBay for $5. You just plug an SD card and it will just play the thing that you want it to play. And I edited some footage. I got this kind of running deer. And I don't have the best footage of the results of this because it was a bit difficult to film, and some of my filming got corrupted. But basically, I just rode this along the seafront, projecting this digital stag that would kind of chase me, that would kind of, you can kind of see a little bit. So because you can't change the focus of the image, you can't really very easily get closer or further from surfaces. It would kind of blur and warp, and bits of it would disappear inside the windows of houses, and some of it would kind of reflect off cars. But this was great fun, and I'm desperate to make 20 of them and have a herd of stag running through a city at some point. Yeah. So that's kind of me. That's the residency. At this point, I thought it'd be really good if we do some questions. If you've got any questions about maybe if you've got ideas about where I could take that work next, if you've got questions about your own practice, how you could use projection in that. And then we'll have a little break, and then I'll do some short demos and tutorials on After Effects and MapMap after the break. But yeah, has anyone got any questions? Thanks so much for listening.
Hi, Thomas.
Hi.
Can you see me?
I can see you.
I can't see me.
Let me stop sharing. That might help.
Yeah. Oh, hi. That was really inspiring. Thank you. That was fantastic.
I was really nervous. It's nice to see someone. Remember, I'm not just here alone talking to myself.
Well, I was eating soup and I didn't want to. Yeah, it was fantastic. It really was.
Thank you.
I really appreciated you sharing the starters with what equipment you're using, because that's really confusing when you're looking to buy stuff. I wanted to just check, projecting onto scrim or gauze, is it better to do it on the theatre reflective stuff?
I would say it's, if you're going to do a high-end production, spend the money and do the theatre stuff, but the theatre stuff is going to cost you £500–600 for 2 square meters.
Oh, right.
So yeah. It really adds up. So that's why I was investigating kind of using something that's a bit more readily available. So the stuff that I was using was £2 for 2 meters squared, whereas it would be, you know, £500 for the high-end stuff.
Great. That's useful to know. And the second thing is, we've got some, I don't know if you've been to Lincoln at all, but we've got some fantastic spots for projecting outside. And I've spent quite a long time trying to figure out how to do it. I wondered if you'd explain your media player with the phone and the thing a bit more. I don't think I understand properly what you've got going there.
Sure. Okay. So that kind of was an exercise in, can I move a projector? So I was using, you know, like a portable phone charger that you might have So I've just plugged that into a portable projector. So you can get them
Oh,
for
right. Yeah.
20 quid.
Yeah.
So that's kind of step one, but the image isn't great. It's not a huge bright image, but it's enough for you to see in the dark.
Yeah.
And they're cheap. I mean, you can make one for 50 quid, you know, with a £15 projector and a £10 battery pack. And those kind of projectors will come with a media player built into them. That kind of cheaper version. The kind of step up from that was the portable power station, we call them, which is like a recreational battery.
Oh, right.
So the one that I'm using in those experiments is about £500 if you buy it new, but it will last, the projector that I used it for, about 90 minutes. So outdoor projection, I would say when I've done it, I've always tried to get hold of power. So run a power cable from somewhere. If you're stationary, a generator will work probably better than one of those rechargeable electric recreational batteries, but I was on a bike, so I didn't want to have a generator chugging along next to me. But yeah.
Yeah, it looked really good.
Are you thinking to do, what kind of outdoor projection are you kind of thinking of, or are you not sure?
Well, with COVID, lots of us have gone from moving to outside, and I've got some work in a very, very large church, so it'll be a bit like outside.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you could cycle around the nave and not bump into anybody.
Wow.
So I haven't got anything in particular. I've not done this before. I've inherited a very cheap, clunky projector, and I'm learning Reaper at the moment. So, early days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, feel free to send me an email if there's other things I can help with. But
great,
I would say, yeah, power. Look, if you're inside, if you are inside, but it's a large space, look for plug-in power.
Yeah.
I would say.
I've got a nice vision of having quite a few people cycling around the nave, just seeing you on your bike. And
do it. Bring a digital menagerie to the church.
Yeah, just what they need. I will. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for your questions. Is it, anyone else got any questions or thoughts?
Let's see if I've got any more. Oh, just a question about how long is it safe to run the projectors that you've listed, the Epson and the Optimo? How long is it safe to run them for in a session, do you think?
There isn't really I've never come across a time that it's stopped being safe to run them. They should all come with enough cooling and all those kind of things to be fine. They should kind of look after themselves. If they get too hot, they'll turn themselves off. But I've ran projectors, 8 hours a day, and I've never had a problem.
I've had a few problems with overhead projectors.
Right.
They have a capacity for not blowing up, but blowing. And there was one more question. Hold on. Oh yeah, I was just thinking about the safety of combustible elements and their projectors too. I wonder if that's anything I should be aware of.
Are you imagining projectors will be close to things that they might be projecting on?
I've got some Fresnel lens that I've been playing around with.
Right. Okay.
And I don't know if I just didn't know if you'd come across them, whether they'd melt or whether there's a combustible element, just to be aware of. That's all.
It depends what kind of projector you're using. It's quite funny. I didn't include it in this presentation because I think what I'm doing is dangerous, but I'll talk about it a little bit anyway. Whereas I'm looking inside projectors to replace lenses in there, and I did try and replace a filter, which I managed to melt. So I would say if you're using specifically a halogen lamp projector, this is what I found through my kind of research. halogens will get super, super hot, and they've got lots of filters around them to reflect and bounce light, specifically at the cooling that a projector has. So if you're messing around with inside of the projector, great, but be aware, and also maybe put some extra cooling in, so an extra fan, a cooling vent, while you're exploring it, I think. Just check it. And then I think Fresnel lens, that's the one that kind of puts everything perpendicular, isn't it? The light all kind of goes, is that right?
I don't know. I've got one here. I like them because I can carry them around and they're not breakable. So these are the stuff that our old grandpas uses to read his old newspapers, that kind of thing, and they've been quite fun in the landscape here. Yeah.
So I know most projectors will have a Fresnel lens inside them, because when the kind of light comes out from the bulb, it'll bounce around some mirrors, and then it'll all get kind of sorted through a Fresnel lens to be perpendicular and hit. If it's an LCD projector, it'll hit the screen kind of directly across rather than at funny angles. So it'd be interesting to see. So the light that comes out of a projector is already
Fresneled. Okay, that's good.
I think
well, that'd be fun to play with. Yeah,
absolutely. I love messing around with lenses. My favorite thing.
That's great, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else got any questions? Okay, so in that case, what I think we'll do is, if we have 5-10 minute break, maybe till 10 to, and then when we come back, I can go through some software and do a little bit of a demo of projection mapping with some free software. So yeah, see you guys in 10 minutes. That's okay. Oh, sorry.
Just a quick one. I managed to download the extension, but not the map thing. I didn't manage to download the map software.
Okay, that's fine. Well, I think we're recording all of this, and it might get cut up into sections. So if there's a bit that you're missing, it should be recorded and put online, and you can follow along after.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Right. Okay, thanks. See you later.
No worries. See you in a bit. Thanks, Biz. Right. Fab. So I'm just going to run through a kind of flow chart, if you can see that, of what you kind of need to do projection, just to kind of do really basic stuff. So can I do the little pointer? Yes. So from one end to the other, this is the kind of things that make up projections. You need power, which is going to be a battery, a power outlet or a generator. Those are the most kind of common things that you're going to look for. 99% of the time, you're going to want to plug a projector into the wall and just get the basic power from it. I would say try and find that before you try and use a generator or a battery, so extension cables, unless of course you're moving the projector. The next thing you're going to need is something to play media. So that might be a laptop. You might be running things straight from a laptop, a PC, but also a physical media player, like you might find on eBay. So you can just type in media player. They're about that big. I don't know if I might have one, I'm not sure. No, but they're about the size of a credit card. And all that will do, it will plug straight into the projector. So through a HDMI or a VGA, it'll plug directly into the projector. It usually comes with a little remote. You can load media onto that with an SD card or a memory stick. Something that I use quite a lot, just because I want to have a little bit more control, is I will sort of custom make a media player on a Raspberry Pi, which looks like this, which is just a little computer. And I'll just put my media on a memory stick, which I can just plug in, take it out, change it, and put it back in. So those are the kind of ways you're going to do it. Something to store the media, something to play the media. And it's in between these two bits that projection mapping happens. You can do it in two ways. You can do kind of, I guess, live projection mapping, which is where the computer is handling the mapping process. And that's going to be later map. We're going to look at that. And that would be like live projection mapping, if you like, where it's happening in the machine. Or a lot of the times where I'm using, if I'm doing an installation with a lot of projectors, there are like media servers and there's sort of output hubs and display hubs, but they all get quite expensive. So what I'll do quite a lot is I will map in a software, export that, and then plug that directly into the projector. So I'll take a laptop over, work in something like After Effects, make my footage to fit the shape that I want it to do, render that out, save that video file, and then that file goes into a media player, and I kind of work around those units, and that will just bring the cost down by thousands when you're doing a project. So there's two kind of ways. There's that kind of stored way, or there's live projection mapping. Media projector. So those ones that I've kind of pointed out, I think are really good starter ones. Look at the brightness. I mean, that's your kind of top line on the projector. How bright is it? The brighter is almost usually the better, really, unless you know you're going to be really close to something, and then you can look at the throw ratio. Sounds really obvious, but a direct line of sight from projector to surface. I would say every time I do a site visit to look at a place to install a projector, the main thing I'm looking at is where have I got the most space between where a projector is going to go and where it's going to project onto. That sounds really obvious, but we don't all just live in big, white cubes where there's infinity space. People will move in a space. I would say a line of sight, kind of get it in your mind when you're looking at sites. So that's kind of a priority of things we need to look at. So there's space for the light to travel. And a surface. And I've got some kind of examples of surfaces, but like a wall, a projection screen, a gauze. The surface is kind of half of the job when you're doing projection. You're not kind of making this work in a vacuum. It has to respond to the space that you're in. So really it's half all of this back here, and half of it is the surface. So finding the right surface, the right space. But that doesn't mean you can't use spaces in interesting ways. I guess if you were thinking about what's going to give you the highest fidelity of your image, the most read on it, the most brightness, contrast, what's going to give you the best technical image, this image on the left, this white box, no windows, no external light, would be ideal. You can control the environment, you can control how bright it is, you can control the distance of the equipment, the power, you can control reflectivity, you've got kind of, you can make all these things fit the projection. Whereas the thing on the right here, which is beautiful, but that's never going to be an underwater scene. It's never going to be space. It's always going to be what it is. So you kind of have to be aware of what you want to do. Do you want to respond to a space, which I think is so interesting, because I think, if you want to work in a white box, why is it not a video on a screen, and then you have complete control? You're doing projection because it's in the space and it has a relation to you. So you kind of have to understand that and work to that. So yeah, it depends what you want, but I think some kind of balance. But if you want people to read an image, a white opaque wall. If you want to add a little bit of magic to a venue, then great, find an interesting venue. So I'm just going to show two little tech demos. They're not intimidating, they're really accessible. One will be using After Effects to just activate just a little feature within After Effects, which I use constantly and didn't know for a long time, and saves me loads and loads of time and loads of rendering. And another one is Map, which I've only started using recently, but it's open source, it's free, it works on Mac, PC, Linux, it works everywhere, and it's quite easy. So first of all, so this is After Effects. So if you're already kind of making content, you're already doing animation, you're already making videos and things, you probably know After Effects. I use it quite a lot to make a lot of the content that I project and use. And there's a way within After Effects, so I don't know if you can see this behind me, but I've got a piece of paper which I kind of, let's delete that. Let's put something else in. Circles, I've got a B, which I can put. Can you see that? And what it's doing is it's just live projecting out exactly to the proportions of the projector, the images that I'm putting in here. It's really quick. It means you can make adjustments kind of on the fly. You might want to change the color of something, and you can just work a bit more naturally with it without having to iterate and change media and pull it back in. And it's really simple to kind of activate this. And so I'll do that and I'll show you how I use it. All you need to do is you go to Edit, Preferences. I'll do this a couple of times in case you need to write it down. Video Preview. Not showing me. You see that second window that's popped up? Yeah, great. So here it's just listing all the video devices you've got plugged in. So you just want to enable Mercury Transmit, select the extra monitor that you've got plugged in. So I've got here my second monitor. Okay. And that should now treat the projector as if you have a second monitor plugged in. So you can live edit to the projection surface and then just render it out. And then, for the example I gave before, just render it out to a USB, plug that into a memory, into a media player, and it just makes things a lot quicker. The way I'll use this if I'm doing kind of complex scenes is I'll use solid layers and kind of mark those out. So don't worry if you don't really use After Effects, this is all a bit new to you, but for those of you, I'll just kind of go through it. So layer, new, solid, garish color. That's just kind of made that all blue. I've stuck a white piece of paper to the wall, and now I can, just with the pen tool, draw around that shape and just tweak it. To match that. Shape. And the kind of the value of this is, so I could do that really quickly. That took me 2 seconds. And if this was a cathedral door or a bathroom with each tile that needed to be mapped, I can do this super quick, go home and then work on it from home. So you can kind of remote projection map. As long as you leave your projector where it is and don't come back and touch it, you can go home with all these kind of layers which you can then animate on top of. You've got kind of making a replica of the scene. So that's Mercury Transmit. I'm just going to show you one more time how to find it. So Edit, Preferences, and Video Preview. You just enable it here. So that's After Effects. If that was not so clear and you want me to go through it again, please let me know, and I can have a go at doing that. Great. And then let me just look it up. Okay. So map looks like this. It's really minimal, the interface. It's pretty basic, but also quite powerful with some of the things you can do with it. I'll just kind of go through the layout of the software so you kind of know what everything is. This is your input editor, this kind of box here. So this is where you decide what parts of video you want to treat as input. So you want to treat as coming into the software. The second one down here, your output editor, you decide what parts of the video you want to treat as output, so going to the projector. On the right here, you've got two tabs. You've got a library tab and the layers tab. So library is the media that you pulled in, so the video files, photo files, GIFs, text, those kind of things, anything visual. And then you've got layers, so how those kind of layers fit on top of each other. It might make a little bit more sense as I go through it. But for start, we're just going to get going and pull in some media. So I'm going to pull in so what I've done is I've pulled in the media, which has gone into my library here, and I've just assigned it with a mesh. So it comes with these three meshes, circle, triangle, square. And I've got a layer, which is my first mesh, which is a square layer. I'm going to zoom out here. A lot of projection mapping tutorials will kind of show you squares. I don't really deal with that many squares in real life, but thankfully in map you can do kind of vertices, pulling and changing. You can add vertices to shapes. So here in my input, I'm quite happy with the whole video, but say if I wanted to only have this much of the video, I don't know if you can see how down in the bottom there, that's changing. It's kind of pulling it in. If we click, it'll give us other options. We can pull across here, click, move, pull. So we can kind of decide what part of that video we want to kind of come into the projection mapping software, if you like. And then this is our output window where we can decide where it outputs to. If we want to have a kind of live preview of what's happening behind us, we just click between these, press that and live. You can't really see it at the moment because it's down. There we go. Just check on the camera if you can see that. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so you've got the input window here to decide what piece of that footage you want in, and then the output down here where you can decide how you want that to output to the projector. So you can move it around. Again, you can kind of warp it. So if we wanted to try and fit it to that piece of paper I got on the wall, I'd pull these kind of handles in and just pin those vertices to the paper. This technique is called corner pinning, and it's quite a basic kind of form of projection mapping. So now I've got that B that only exists on that piece of paper. To show the next bit, I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. So yeah, I don't usually project map to squares that often. So if I needed to project to, I don't know, like an archway over a door or something similar, here in the inspector panel down at the bottom right, you've got the option to add subdivisions. So at the moment, you've got all this information. The opacity is 100%. The source, that's the file that we're using. The subdivisions of the shape, so it's subdivided twice, I think 4 sides. And you've got information about the input and output shape, which is a little bit less useful. But for example, if I wanted to map to, say, an arch, I would want to increase my vertical subdivisions. So I would do that by, not vertical at all, horizontal. For example, 6. Now I can start pulling that footage across shapes. So, for example, if I had some footage of the tide coming in or a wave rolling in across a beach, and I wanted that to kind of splash up and around a door, I would bring that footage here into the input editor, maybe edit out the photographer's feet out of the shot, and then by looking at where I'm projecting, map that to the kind of shape, like this. Just kind of makes that. You can add more footage and do kind of layers. Sparkles. Oh. Oh. Okay, that crashed. Let me pull that back up. 2 seconds. Just while I'm loading that up, while I get the software back up, any quick questions about things that I'm not clicking on that people would like to know what they do? So I'll just pull those things back in to show you. Yeah, so as well as the subdivisions, which are going to be really useful if you're mapping to physical shapes, you can also do layers. So here now I've got 2 layers. All I did was pull in 2 kinds of content from the library and then put those in as meshes. So here, and those form layers here. So we've got mesh 1, and mesh 2. And then the thing you can do is play with the opacity of these. My editing. You can kind of layer those up and kind of do like a sort of digital collage and kind of map out the space. That's the kind of basics of using map. It's quite accessible. It's kind of entry level. Can't do anything too crazy with it, but it means you can go into a space and map it quite quickly. Anyone got any questions on using that? No. I can see some people have like joined. I don't know if you've got any questions about. Oh.
Are there any Photoshop type filters between the layers?
No, but I was having a think about in the break about the kind of project we're looking at doing. Something that I use sometimes if I'm doing something that I need to kind of control, something that you use a lot in theatre is QLab. I don't know if you've used that before.
Heard of it, but not used it.
QLab, yeah, it does cost. I think it's a subscription program, but it's very similar. The projection feature is very similar to MapMap in that it uses layers, it uses that corner pinning and also the vertices, so it's pretty much really similar. But I think that does have the blend mode. You mean like add and multiply and
difference
and those kind of things? Yeah, that does. I think that one does. But also After Effects has those blend modes in as well. So if you've used After Effects, then you'll be able to do it in that, and then just export it from there.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Sorry, I missed that. Did you say you cannot use Photoshop filters and effects instead of using side effects?
So in programs like After Effects and QLab, you can use those similar blending modes like add and multiply. I don't think in MapMap you've got the functionality to do that. You've just got the opacity that you can play with. But I think that's because it's a basic one, but maybe look at After Effects and use that Mercury transit to play in there.
So Photoshop isn't compatible?
Photoshop, I wouldn't use Photoshop to do projection mapping. No, I think more often than not, you're going to want to work with video rather than photos. I know Photoshop's got some video use. Is that kind of your main software that you use?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My computer's pretty old, so it can't be upgraded for anything, more fancy. So that's the reason why. So if I can use existing software,
sure,
that would be easier.
I think you might. I mean, you wouldn't be able to do motion, but you might be able to set Photoshop to have a
animation.
Similar.
You can set it as an animation, which I've used before. So I'm just trying to think what other motion software I've got on, which I haven't used for a while. But so as long as I have a motion software.
Well, it's just the usual. You usually projection map with video, but I'm just going to try and quickly load up Photoshop and see if there's a way. I guess the way you could do it would be to, if you knew the exact resolution of your projector. So, for example, mine's 1920. So if you knew the exact resolution, then you could output that as a second display, similar to how you would in After Effects, and just have that image fill the entire screen. So if you go into the display settings of your laptop, put the options to mirror this display rather than extend the display. So when you have those two displays plugged in, and then you could kind of draw and treat the Photoshop canvas as the full extent of the light that you're projecting from the projector. Does that make sense? I'm kind of like thinking on my feet.
Yeah, it does make sense.
And I think that could be really lovely, because then I guess you can kind of really draw in light. You wouldn't be able to do so much animation. Well, I suppose you could do animation. I suppose you would just have to.
I suppose it's trial and error by the sound.
Yeah.
Try it and then see.
Yeah, I've never done it. If you do it, let me know, because it sounds interesting.
Well, thank you. Anyway, yeah.
Let us know too, Beth. Let us know too, won't you?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Sorry, what did you say?
I'm keen to see how that goes as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers. Any other questions or things that's kind of brought up? No. Okie doke. Any questions about, I don't know, pieces of work, about tech, about, I don't know. Well, guys, I mean, that's it from me. If there aren't any more questions, thanks so much for joining in. Please let me know about, I'm going to put my email and my social and stuff in the chat. Please let me know about any work that you do with projection. Bev, all the eyes are on you, I'm afraid, to see how Photoshop works out. But yeah, let me know how things go.
It was really great, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. And yeah, do get in touch if you want some advice on that project that you're looking at doing with the church.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'll be helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone so much. Thanks for coming, and yeah, good luck with projection.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Cheers.